All right, everybody, welcome to Friday. Without a doubt, one of the biggest questions I receive in Pathfinders or just on the channel in general is what are timelines and how can we utilize them or how can we impact them? And so I have a lesson here for you today. This video is about making choices, which is really about how you work with timelines, and archetypal energy that you may be embodying or that you may be choosing, and how that impacts the direction of your life, how that impacts the acceleration possibilities in your ascension process or just in your day to day living. So I hope you enjoy this lesson. And this is a little bit longer. This is a part one and a part two that we put together. So this is a little bit longer, but I hope you enjoy it. If you have some suggestions or topics that come to mind after watching this, please drop a comment below. If you like this content, please hit the subscribe button and let me know that these are the kinds of videos or kinds of lessons you'd like me to continue making. I'm gonna talk more about timelines today. We've talked a little bit already in our discussion today about intuition and what that means in terms of making choices. Okay, timelines are just choices. That's it. And if you've ever heard of something called reality transurfing, which I referenced earlier, reality transurfing is recognizing that here I am, right? And there are 30 to 1,000 different possibilities, right? If I get up from this chair and go into that room and have lunch, or I stay here and do the reading, or I get in my car and I drive to Idaho, or I, call Colleen and we go out for a drink, or I da 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 da, right? There's a million different possibilities. And those are known as timelines. Because if I stop doing readings and I drive to Idaho or go out with Colleen, I'm like, I'm just going to stay here at the Nonantum. We're just going to hang here for like a week or 10 years or something. That's a choice I'm making, right? That's a choice I'm making. And that is a direction I'm taking. So intuition can get blocked if we're thinking there's only two choices, because there's a million choices. Okay, there are a million choices. So let me first start this by saying to you that the reasons why you might feel your intuition is blocked before we even get to making those choices. Number one, you're afraid of change, because making a new choice will make change. If you're standing at, like I'm sitting here, and at 2:30, we're going to stop talking and I'm going to do another reading. I'm going to take Charlie for a walk. I have my choices have already been made for today. I've made my choices for today. Somebody comes to the door, that could shift things, but I'm doing that. Am I open to the fact that somebody could come to the door and everything? Yes, I'm not shutting things off. But if you are afraid of change, what can happen is that you continually make the same choices from the same vibration, or you make different choices from that same vibration, but you're never getting out of that frequency. It's always going to be in that same frequency of energy. So if you come at something from a victim mentality, and I'm sitting here in my victim role going, why is everybody watching another tarot channel and not mine? And I'm just going to stop and not do this. And I'm just so pissed about it. And I get into this like spiral, right? I get into this victim spiral. And here's the thing, it cuts off my choices. So that doesn't bring me any more choices. And so what the victim will do, the victim archetype will do, is keep you from change. It will keep you from, expanding yourself. The wounded ego, all of the shadow rescuer. There's a lot of archetypal experiences that you can have in your life that will keep you from getting out of your particular timeline. Society. This is what society says is okay for me. And I totally buy into that. This is what my family says is okay for me. And I totally buy into that. This is what I believe will keep me safe. This is what I believe will keep me liked by that person. This is what I believe will keep me getting money from this job. All of these things can be true. And when you're looking for intuition, if you're wanting to make change, then some of those things fall out of your life. So you've all experienced this. I know we've talked about this before, that I want to make change. I want the love of my life. What if that person is not the person with you? What if that person requires you to move to Tibet? What if that person, what if this timeline, right? This timeline requires you to move from where you are, or physically let other people drop out of your life, or you become a vegan, and that means you don't have as much in common with these guys who all do, you know, grilling and all this kind of stuff, and you drop out of that friend group or something like that. Change keeps us in a timeline so much that you can get, that's where tower moments can happen. Fear of change, right? Because we want to have a sense of control and safety in our lives. And only when we finally come to the place, the understanding that we have control over choices that we make, but we don't really have control over all the things on that trajectory that will happen. The one constant is change. And that keeps you in a loop. That keeps you in guidance loops a lot. So holding on to a certain identity or ego or whatever it is, who am I if I don't have this fill in the blank? I don't have this job title. I don't have this marriage. I don't have this bank account. I don't have this, you know, position in the community. Like, who am I? And what if my choice drops some of that out, right? What if my choice drops some of that out? So when we ask for guidance, but we're not willing to have a person drop out of our life because we're in a higher vibration, and all of a sudden it's like that person's got to go because they're not going with you. That's their choice. They are making that choice. You move in a higher vibration and that friend comes along, or they don't. That's their choice, right? That is their choice. So who am I if I don't have this job title? Who am I if I don't have this soul-sucking career because I live through my victim identity and everybody, you know, I take everybody on my back and all of that. So you can see how that might be an ego death. Back to that dark night of the ego. That change can bring in a dark night of the ego. This one, I heard Carolyn Mace talking about this in Vancouver, which is why I talked about her this morning. Her perception of this, which the more I think about this, at first it makes people angry. But when you think about this more, I think you'll see you don't have enough self-esteem. That's why you're not getting guidance. And it's not about self-worth. This is not a shame-based kind of thing. Self-esteem comes from us overcoming challenges in our life. And if you don't know on some level that you are a piece of the divine, then everything seems shame-based, right? Then there's this whole idea of I'm not worthy of guidance and all of that kind of stuff. If not having enough self-esteem sounds shaming, because a lot of people, I remember the day she talked about that, there were a fair amount of people in that room who were like, oh, what? But she kept talking about it, and I kind of went on both sides of this. Because if you're coming from a lens of, I am not worthy of guidance, you're definitely blocking guidance. Because there is nothing outside of you, right, that you need to be worthy of anything. You're worthy right now. All right. You're worthy right now. There's nowhere to go, right? There's nothing to claim. You are it right now. You are light. There's nothing to do with that. It's the ego identities that are holding us in those places of not being worthy, right? It's the archetypal energy of the saboteur or the damsel in distress or the rescuer or something like that. Self-esteem comes from, and confidence comes from, they are very close in terms of their concept. Self-esteem is a system. Confidence is a feeling. Okay. Self-esteem is a system. You have different esteem systems. One that keeps you in survival, right? That is like your survival. I wrote a bunch of things this morning about that. A survival esteem system, an ego esteem. There's esteem comes from systemic decision making and one feeding the other. Self-confidence is kind of a result of that. Self-confidence is the result of esteem. Every time you get an esteem boost, have you noticed that when you are like in a feeling of self-esteem, you're like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to go with you idiots and go down that road. I'm not going to do that. I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. I don't need to go there. And it feels like a little ego in there, which is true. But at the same time, the ego part of this is the thing that keeps us alive, right? Kind of keeps us alive. So if you don't have enough self-esteem, you are not saying, I am. You're not saying, I'm a piece of divinity. You're not saying that I am as worthy of everything known to man as everyone else is too. You're not saying that. You're like, okay, please just give me something. Okay. It's like coming from a place of I'm not doing it. I'm not co-creating with the universe. It's coming from that place. So you don't stay in like, okay, so there's nothing outside of you that you need. You don't stay in a terrible relationship or a terrible job with esteem. You can't, it won't happen. What will happen is there's a false sense of security around, hey, this relationship is keeping me safe. What is the archetype at work then, right? That if it's not what you want, if it's not feeding you in some way, if it's not growing you in some way, if you're not feeling like, hey, this is meant for me, even if it sucks, even if you're like looking at it and going, God, this is a hard thing. But if it's growing you, that's building esteem, right? It's growing you. But you're not staying if you're not doing anything about it, then it's a false sense of security. Then there's something else at work here. Especially as it relates to your ego identity. And if you're not willing to sort of let go to be part of the infinite, right? And take those steps, one step at a time, right? One step at a time. It's not about not being good enough, and it's not about being not enough. So, a spiritual seeker will be comfortable with the paradox of I am everything and I am nothing at the same time. Ram Dass has a great documentary about being nobody. When you're nobody, you're going to get all kinds of guidance. When you don't have a dog in the fight about, I'm the vice president of Manamana, and this is how I have to be. And so I can't get guidance about it because what if my guidance says, stop being the vice president of Manamana and go and be a astrology teacher or something like that? You're like, fuck off, right? Now, because my esteem is wrapped up in that. But if you know that your esteem is inside of you and just being here, right? If you can transfer that to, I get up every day and I align with spirit and I do what's in front of me instead of the external trappings of it, you've come a long way. You have come a long way. And becoming nobody is not about low self-esteem, but it's about real humility, right? It's about real humility. False humility is bravado, right? Is a little bravado. So the self-esteem thing, if you don't have enough if you don't have enough self-esteem, then you're coming from a place of victim mentality or something else that's keeping that guidance shut down. Same with ego, keeping guidance shut down for you, that you're not willing to hear it. The third thing is you're wedded to the ordinary. A lot of, and I remember doing this, a lot of people, and I will just say my own experience, that we convince ourselves that staying small or staying in my own little plot that I've been allotted is abundance. And if you knew and were really plugged into being the vastness of everything, the plot of land doesn't matter, and none of that stuff matters. If you're asking for abundance and you are convinced that this what you have is abundance, then you will continue to get that. If you're not saying, okay, what I have is great, I'm grateful for what I have, and I'm open to what spirit has in front of me. I'm open to the change of it, because it always goes back to the fear of change. And I remember when I was asking for a divorce, I knew that once I said those words, I could not take them back. Once they were out of my mouth, that was going to be, and that was my mindset. And I was like, looking back on it now, there were 3 or 4 different moments in time when I could have said, these are the things that led me to ask for that. And I am at the place where I am fine with this being over. You know what I'm saying? So it's not always like one and done. You're opening yourself up to new possibilities when you finally speak some kind of truth that needs to be said. And some of those possibilities you don't even know. And that's what timelines are, right? The infinite timelines of being able to be open enough to speak your truth about something. And your brain has calculated that this is what's going to happen, and this, and then this, and then this, and then this. But that's not that's a small possibility, but it's not the hundreds of possibilities that could happen. And you have infinite timelines. So one choice, one shift can change things immeasurably. So when they talk about reality transurfing, there's plenty of people on YouTube, and I've seen a few of them. They're talking about changing your present by going back and changing some kind of decision. No, we can't do that yet. But that's not what they're talking about. They're basically saying, okay, I feel like earlier in our conversation, we were talking about readings that were resonating about 7 years ago. I feel like that's what this is trying to say, is that reality transurfing is basically saying you're getting another choice to make a choice on this timeline. The more you double down on something, the more you surf into the future on that timeline. The more it's like, I am not going to make this change. I am not going to do this. That means you're locking in some kind, without giving yourself any opportunities or options, right? You're locking yourself into this, and that shuts down guidance. That absolutely shuts down guidance. So it's kind of interesting the reason you're staying stuck, if you feel stuck, and we've all felt stuck, right? You've all felt stuck. So the reason you stay stuck is also that you're attached to the story. You're attached to a story that you've told yourself about an experience. And not only you're attached to it, meaning I'm unwilling to hear other stories. Like, I'm attached to the story that corporate America sucks all the time, everywhere. Okay, there's a lot of evidence to support that, but not everywhere. There could be different pockets that people are really working with their gifts, really expanding themselves, really doing all that. So that's not for me to say. For my own experience, that didn't work for me. Okay, but maybe not for everybody. Right? Maybe not for everybody. So you only care really about your own, you can only make choice and make change within you. That's it. And if you're stuck with stories, if you stay with stories, so I'll give you an example that as an adopted kid, I know some of you are adopted, some of you have said to me that you're adopted. And there's a story that comes with being adopted that, and this is societal, this is the way we in the Western world have thought about it, is that be fucking grateful, because if it weren't for these people, you'd be on the side of a hill somewhere. Now, that's the message I got. No one ever said that to me, but I got that message about you better be grateful. And I got it from my parents' friends. I got it from other people. Like, oh, when they would hear, most people I grew up with didn't even know I was adopted or anything like that. It wasn't a secret. Like no one was keeping a secret, really. I found out about it when I was like 6 or 7. But if I stayed stuck in that and was like so resistant, and this happened for many, many years, I was resistant to any kind of awareness around my parents. I was so resistant. I'm so grateful to them and everything. I was so resistant to hear anything, to hear any guidance about like, your mom didn't really support your dreams. That's true. She didn't. She was busy. She was older. She had her own. And I was just never wanting to say that because Mary T, right? Mary T. But it's, and in different cultures, it's a totally verboten thing or whatever, but to even question. But I was missing out on guidance for a long time because I had that story that I was supposed to be grateful and not question anything. But you know what? They're human beings, great parent, good parents, whatever. But like people make mistakes all the time. It's human. It doesn't make them, it's not like they're God and goddess or they're the devil. Like it's not a binary kind of choice. But if you're stuck in a story, you're making choices based on that story. And that's something that happened to me 40 years ago. That's a story that was told to me 40, 50 years ago. If I'm still stuck in that story, I am making choices now based on that story. So, and we all do it. What's my identity? And I was thinking I was kind of having this theory, 222 as I'm saying this, my little theory about, God, if I was just a Scorpio rising, those fuckers are so good at change. Y'all are so good at risk and change. Aquarius rising, detached, cold. I can become detached, right? Libra rising, people pleasing. Okay, but you can make a lot of, you get more flies with sugar than vinegar, like all whatever, right? You can hear those stories. Aries rising, I could be thought of as too self-centered or selfish when I'm just being bold on my own behalf. And what are Capricorn, Virgo, and Taurus told? I always have to do the right in the right way, in the right order. It must happen this way. Come on. You guys are nice and grounded. You can really help us out when some of us are sort of flying around and things. So you can look at what about Gemini? What about Gemini? Gemini can see Gemini and Libra. Yeah, Gemini and Libra. There's another one, maybe Pisces, can see both sides of things. Gemini and Libra can see both sides of things. Sagittarius, too optimistic. You're naive as fuck. Okay. I'm a Sagittarian, so I can say that. But you can look at every single part of you. I was just riffing with the signs, but because those are archetypal identities, right? Those are stories we tell ourselves. And I'm continually shocked at how many Aquarians resonate with an Aquarius reading, or how many, like we're really tapping into the universal pool of guidance Some Aquarians resonate to it, some of them don't. And I'm less and less convinced that it has much to do with the sign. I'm much more plugged into, okay, this is a story that wants to be told. My intention is for Aquarius, but what if there's some Pisces watching that? And that speaks to them. I'm like, there's more here at work than I know. So even with my own work, it's like, open yourself up that you could be reading for more than just Cancer here. You could be reading for a group of people who are having this story. And my point is, talking about story, is that story can keep us safe, but story can also stop us. And which is it for you? All right. Which is it for you? Are you choosing timelines are you making choices based on stories that you told yourself all your life? Ego. Who do I think I am in the world? Who do I think I am? And am I able to see all the different archetypes at work in me? Am I able to see that sometimes, like with this particular person, I behave like a damsel in distress because that's the relationship I have with this person. And with this other person, I act as the teacher or the guide. With this other person, I act as the saboteur because there's something about them that I just want to stop. Okay. So this is definitely when you have a choice in front of you. When you have a choice in front of you, take a look at what archetype is at work. Like I said, even the adult archetype has a lower vibration to it. No risk. I'm taking no risk. That's a lower vibe of an adult archetype. Only logic. That's not taking into account feeling, because sometimes you could make a choice. I've taken career paths because of how I felt. I wanted to feel a certain way. That's not logical. I've taken less money to feel better, to feel valued, right? And it's kind of like an oxymoron, right? Most people think of value as commensurately with the money, but there's plenty of people who do things in the world who have a valuable skill that is very, I don't know, something you might consider awful or hurtful, right? So we're looking at that as a culture right now about what we value. But I want you to know, as we're closing this out today, I want you to know that you can rewrite any script. You can look at your life, do a timeline, look at the choices you've made and try to determine. I definitely recommend this deck. I don't have any connection to it or really to Carolyn other than going to that and reading her books. But I recommend it because there's lots of archetypes in here that you might not consider. Gambler, priest, martyr.
What's that one called, Mary Jo?
Huh?
What's that one called?
What? This deck?
Yeah.
It's just called Archetype Cards.
Okay.
She didn't really get creative with this.
No, I just want to put a link up.
Yeah. Guide, detective, athlete, rescuer, king. I mean, it's great to just read through this. And, in her book, the little book that goes with this, and in Sacred Contracts, she talks about the 4 archetypes of survival. She talks about the baseline archetypes that we all have. I think someone asked me this question a while ago, maybe a couple months ago: child, victim, prostitute, and saboteur. We all have those archetypes in our makeup. What do you prostitute yourself for? What do you give away your values so that you get? Child, what don't you take responsibility for? Victim, what has happened to me? And how am I powerless, right? And victim, prostitute, and saboteur, how am I blowing up relationships or opportunities? And why am I doing that? So this is going to bring you to a deeper level, and it will give you an ability to, I know this is kind of like cerebral, so you're kind of getting away from your feelings when we're talking about this, but I think it's important to have awareness of this so that you can, when you're making a decision and when you're looking for guidance, you can see what you're doing and be honest with yourself. Oh yeah, this scares the shit out of me. I don't want to go down this road because I'm afraid that the business will collapse. I'm afraid that that person won't like me anymore. I'm afraid that my family will cast me out. Whatever. There's reasons we don't do things, and those are even more relevant sometimes because it's going to give you a sense of your own ability to take in intuition. Once you stop putting things in front of it, really intuition is about removing the blocks to it. Okay. So that's it for me today. I hope that was helpful for you guys. And I definitely recommend her stuff. So next week we can go a little bit deeper into this topic if you like. We can, there's some things I didn't get to in here that I probably want to talk about next week too. All right, you guys, much love. Thank you, Miss Colleen.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit. I want to kind of, this is something I came across with Carolyn Mace, and I have been reading her Sacred Contracts book again. And I had gone to a conference last year that sort of set me on a different path. But I'm coming back around again, and I'm asking more questions because of you guys, because I'm asking more questions about intuition and what blocks it and what opens it up. I'm just asking that in my daily life because I'm working with you guys on that. I'm working on creating lessons around that. And so just in my own life, I'm asking too. I'm looking for examples in my own life. And so I came across this lesson. I thought this would be helpful today to talk about, where breaking it down into 3 levels of intuition: survival intuition, creative intuition, and visionary intuition. Those top 2 ones are allowing downloads, are all of that. Survival intuition is in your body, okay? And it's the one to start with because we all have survival needs, right? This is, the more you experience life, the more things that happen to you, the more you try to be protective and outrun fate. Okay. Because you're like, when you're young, when you're first, just out in the world, you're like, you don't have any experience. So in many ways, you're much more coachable and teachable. I'll share it with you in a second. It's survival, creative, and visionary. Survival is number 1, creative is number 2, and visionary is number 3. So intuition is not really the ability to see the future. The intuition is about reading the room. Okay. Reading the room. And, there you go. So it can really impact your flow of guidance, especially I'm going to spend, I think, the most time on the survival one. I'm not going to get, I promise you, I'm not going to get to visionary today. So we'll do visionary next week. Okay. But survival mode, survival intuition is useful, right? It's useful. It's something that's helping you stay tethered to the planet. It's helping you along in your day-to-day existence. It's helping you with, challenges, very real challenges facing you every day. What you're really doing when you're leveling up through these is you're asking for more responsibility. Okay. You're asking for information that broadens your life, that expands your life. And when we're in survival, intuition, this is really the 5 senses. This is really your 5 senses that we've been talking about for weeks, where survival is really, focus on those chakras. That root chakra, get yourself grounded. That is about survival. That is the ultimate survival chakra. It is about a roof over your head. Is it about, It's about keep safety in many ways. It's about your finances. It's about all of these kinds of things. And part of the body that's connected to these intuition, right, is within you, right? It's all of your chakras. And let me just see with my notes here. I just want to kind of get this to you that when you're in your body, when you're focusing on your root chakra and you're focusing on whatever is out of balance in you, generally, if you have fear, a lot of fear, it's really your lower three chakras we're talking about: the root chakra, the sacral chakra, and the solar plexus chakra. The sacral chakra is about creativity. It really is about creativity. It's about the creation of life, it's womb, it's all of those kinds of things. But it's also a way of us, am I safe? Am I nurtured? Right? There's a little bit of that there. And then the solar plexus is about personal power and will in the world, right? Am I able to move around in the world? Am I able to assert myself? And one of the most interesting things about your survival chakra or your survival intuition is that it puts you in a place of either reacting or ideally responding. It gets better than that with the other two levels of intuition, but survival decisions really come from a place of fight or flight. It comes from a place of I'm reacting to things, like stuff is happening to me. And this engages the victim archetype. Okay. And so then we've talked about archetypes in the past, and we talked about them last week as it relates to timelines. And I'm going to say it again right now, that when you are in an archetype like the victim archetype, you're looking through the lens of, I have no control, I have no power. I only have these choices. Nothing else is, no one's gonna come save me. Larry Bird's not walking through that door. Like, no one's gonna come save me. I have to do it for myself. And there's a victim archetype there that cuts down your choices. It's this or that, black and white thinking. It's this or that. You might feel that everything threatens you. Okay. You might feel that way. So when you're in survival intuition, if you feel that everything is threatening, every bit of change, every kind of stuff that's happening is threatening to you, as opposed to, oh, that's something new, that's something new, that's something new, right? And that's where you'll get. If you're living only in those five senses, right? If you're living only in the five senses and you're living from a place of everything's a threat, if you're living in victim archetype, or if you're living in from that point of view that it's just about survival, Carolyn Mace's book is A Sacred Contract is very interesting. There are 4 main archetypes that we all have. And victim, we all have that. Victim, saboteur, which is not the same thing. Victim, saboteur, child, or prostitute. So victim, saboteur, child, or prostitute. These are 4 core archetypes that we are born with. And your 5 senses, without any elevation, without any work, everything's going to be through those 4 archetypes. Everything. So you're either, does this threaten my survival? Does this particular situation threaten my survival? That's the point of view. And just remember a situation that frightened you in the past. What was it? All right. So I want you to, this is a little exercise that you can use for yourself, but like, I want you to, and again, survival intuition is necessary. We all have it. The goal is to have all of them working. Okay. So if you're stuck in survival though, then I want you to focus all your attention on your solar plexus chakra. Focus all of your attention there. You don't have to do this right now. You can do this later on or in the morning or whenever you want to, whenever you're meditating or whatever you're doing. Focus on that solar plexus and remember in sharp detail a situation that terrified you. Okay? Gonna get fired. Someone asked for a divorce. Whatever it was. My best friend's moving across the country. Whatever it was that terrified you, it's fear we're looking at, not real super sadness or anything like that, because that's a different kind of energy, but looking at something that's threatening your very survival. Whatever it was, we all have them, okay? There's no shame here, no shame. What is that deepest fear? Abandonment, bankruptcy, the relationship's over, my career path is a dead end. What is it that has frightened you? And I want you to focus on this, and I want you to focus on that solar plexus and feel it, feel into it, lean into it. Okay, lean into that, because this is the intuitive feeling that can overwhelm you and can also become a friend, right? This intuition that, okay, this is something, I'm in my victim archetype when I feel like this. It doesn't mean that things aren't threatening. It doesn't mean that this might not be really scary. Okay. But the key here is to work on self-esteem, because y'all are going to have challenges. I'm going to have challenges. Colleen's going to have challenges. Everybody's going to have challenges. I think it's really important to know that when it rains, it doesn't rain just on you. It rains on everybody. Okay. So it's very important to we get really in our own bubbles. And it's really important to know that we all have this in common. I think that, to me, my mother used to sing a song to me when I was going to sleep about, like, everybody's in bed, going to sleep. And, Bobby and Lori and Callie and everybody, it was just like, oh, I don't know. Like, oh, that just feels so comforting to me. It felt really comforting to me. And the reason that we fear change is that, and this is a Carolyn Mace, belief system, which I have aligned with in many of her teachings, that at first it was very off-putting to me. And some of you will feel it, pissed off about this. But the reason we fear change is because we don't think we have our self-esteem is off. And when our self-esteem is off, there's something that we believe about ourselves, that we're not going to be able to handle this, that we can't handle it. And when I first recognized, when I went through that moment when I was like, bankruptcy is my only choice, it clearly wasn't my only choice, but that's what I thought. And then I let go of that. And I was like, you know what? I need help. I need some guidance here. And I am now teachable, because I think that the only choice I have is running into a brick wall at 100 miles an hour. And that is not true. And I started reminding myself of all the things I've overcome, all the things I've been able to do, all the things. Like, oh my God, how did I get here? And so when you start being your own cheerleader, being your own best ally, that says, you know what? You got yourself into college. You bought that car when you had 0 credit rating. You did whatever, you did what was important. Look at how far I've come. I'm getting a ton of spirit chills on that one for all y'all and for me. Because the self-esteem, if you don't have a healthy sense of your power, your personal power, or your ability to do it. Like, there's a guy in my neighborhood who is seriously like MacGyver, right? Like, you give him a piece of string and some tinfoil and some bailing hooks and whatever, and he can make the Taj Mahal. Like, there's just something amazing about, he's like, oh, whatever, I can do it. And he does it every single time. And it's just like, wow, that's incredible. So what is your particular magic that you can always say to yourself, you know what? You got yourself out of that corner. You came back. You did this, right? You saw that this wasn't right for you. You made a different choice. You can do it. You can do it. And that is, if you work on self-esteem, I know that seems like, how is that relevant? But if we don't have it strong enough self-esteem to hear the guidance that sometimes comes through, right? The addict, the addict saying, help me, what to do? Stop drinking. And they're like, no, not that. What else? You know that you're not there yet. If you're like, I keep hearing that I got to quit this job or it's going to make me sick. I keep hearing that, right? This relationship is tearing me away from my own sense of self-worth. I keep hearing that, but I'm just trying to make it work, because if I could just get back to where it was at one point, then I'm going to get myself back. And all of those things, it just says like, you're outsourcing, you're choosing an external thing that needs to be a certain way for me to get my self-esteem back. But in reality, it's you choosing you over that. Right? You choosing you instead of that job that's going to make you sick. Okay. What's the next step in front of me? What's the next step in front of me? Okay. The next step in front of me is I got to find a way to make this much money this month and next month and the following month and the month after that. Okay. There's a huge call for dog walkers in this area. Okay. How would I put that out there? This is when the creative downloads start going, because you're opening yourself up to guidance. Right? You're opening yourself up further. And that survival intuition has spurred this a little bit, because you get to that place of like, okay, I got to do this. I got to. And if I need help, I'm going to ask for help. If I have some mental health problems, I'm going to reach out. If I have some addictions, I'm going to reach out. I'm stronger than all of this. And that is what it means to sort of build that self-esteem and give your every single day, do something. What was it? Eleanor Roosevelt? Every single day, do something that scares you. There's nothing like that. Even little stuff like talking to somebody, if you're afraid of rejection or whatever, just smiling at someone or telling them you like their sweater or something, like, oh, seeing them in the grocery. I always talk about the grocery store because it's a great place. Right. So there is that kind of thing. And it's like, if having healthy self-esteem is going to help you take in the guidance that's coming through. And then you're going to be like, okay, I can handle it. Whatever you got to say to me, I can handle it. So, it's very difficult to stay on your center if you're outsourcing your self-esteem to stuff outside of you, stuff or people or job titles or something. It's very hard to stay centered. So if all of this were to go away, could I step into a new kind of life? Yes, because I've done it 100 times now. I have a lot of confidence around that. I have a lot of self-esteem around that. And if you say no, then that's where you start. Okay. So your survival intuition, when this is directly proportional to the person that's right in front of you. So if you need someone's approval more than you respect your own self and your own voice, if you need their approval, then you're going to pretzel yourself into outsourcing that sense of esteem to someone else, and you will give away your power. That's how people give away their power the whole time, all the time, right? And if you have someone in your family that is a very dominating figure, and at one point it may have been true that you needed their approval. You needed their approval to survive. Okay. And that may have been true as a child. Can you hear Charlie barking, Colleen?
Just a little bit.
Charlie, a little bit? Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. FedEx guys across the street. So if that family, like that father, that mother, that whoever was, I'm sorry, guys. Charlie.
We can barely hear it.
Okay, good. He distracts me, so it's anyway. So if you need somebody else's approval, you're really outsourcing that power. And it is ruining your sense of self-esteem. It's ruining your sovereignty. And knowing, so what you're doing essentially is you're bypassing your actual own intuition, your own voice, your own creative sense, to go back down to the survival mode and go like, all right, what do I got to say to not enrage this person? Walking on eggshells is a good example. What do I got to say to just, because what you're doing is you're making yourself small. You're making yourself small. You're imploding yourself as opposed to expanding yourself. So I talk a lot about Jupiter, and Jupiter is about expansion. We have the sun is going to be hitting Jupiter, conjuncting in Jupiter in Taurus at the end of May. So Jupiter is all about expansion. It's all about showing yourself, shining your light, and all of that. So this is a particularly interesting lesson to be doing right now, because when you can stand up and say, you know what, I think you're wrong about that, to that person. I don't believe in that. That's not how I see things. If you're able to, you can discuss and disagree without imploding with someone who you have given your power away to. You will have progressed. That is a healthy sense of self-esteem. If you can say to that person, I can discuss policy with you, but not when you're screaming at me, and not when your anger is over the top. That's something I'm putting a boundary around. I am not going to do that. So come on back. I'd love to discuss policy with you, but not under these circumstances. You've basically taken your sovereignty back, instead of going, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to let them talk, and I don't really believe anything they're saying. They sound crazy to me, but I'm not really saying it. So you're also not being authentic. And that person has a vested interest in keeping you not authentic. Okay. I love it, Pauline. I love you. And I see this differently. Excellent. So this is for you to mature. Last week in my astrology group, we talked about Saturn, and Saturn's about mystical maturity, right? It's when it goes through each of the signs, it's bringing mystical maturity to those signs. It's basically saying, eat your vegetables and go to bed at a reasonable hour around this part of your life. You're going to have to pull on your big boy pants and make this decision. You're going to have to do something that's going to be really hard, but you know intuitively that this is the right thing for you. And you're going to get a lot of blowback. So is this person ever going to change that? Are they ever going to hear what I'm saying? That, okay, we can discuss the differences, but I'm not going to tolerate that kind of behavior. Can they hear it? Nope. Then you've got a choice. Is this promoting peace in your life? Is this promoting diminished self-esteem? If it's diminished self-esteem, yeah, kind of tough. So your job at that stage of the game, when we have people who are in our lives who we, for whatever reason, we believe we can't move away from that, you have to get your own work done around your own self-esteem. And then you need to come up with some phrases like what I was just saying. I love you, but we disagree about this. It's not something I think is going to be productive to talk about. Something. You're going to need to prepare yourself, and you're going to need to be able to stand up for yourself. Because what's happening is, if you're in that mode of eggshell walking, you can limit the amount of time you spend with somebody. You can decide that I will only do what I need to do, right? When I have to do it, and not engage on those things, not be part of that, because your job is growing your own self-esteem, growing your own survival, growing your own capability, learning about your five senses, learning about your intuition. Oh, boom, I'm moving up to creative. All of a sudden, I'm getting these creative ideas. Like sometimes you can be in the creative or visionary intuition in your career, but when you're with your family, you might as well be five. It can happen in different parts of your life. So it's not like completely universal. I'm very capable in my work. When I'm with my mother, I might as well be 15. Okay. So that's the part to look at and to work on. And you have, what's really awesome is if you can see that different parts of your life, you can look to that one for the experience of how it feels to be sovereign, to be in command of your survival intuition, in command of all of your senses, knowing what they're bringing in, being fine with at a meeting going, you know, I don't really agree with this direction. Can I bring some options to the table? Okay. Like you're totally comfortable in there. All right. So use that experience to help you, because this is about maturing you in that way. This is growth. This is what growth is. It's not, you know, go to the spa, do all of the crystals, do all of that. I love all of that. I am 100% down with that. But also do this kind of work, because that is going to, it all works together. And if you're not willing to do this right now, okay, there's more to it. Work on your intuition, work on your meditation. Work on meditation, work on other things, and get to the point where, okay, yeah, I got to get my power back in this situation. That will bring you more self-esteem. That will open you up to guidance. All right. So there's one topic before we go. I want to just touch on this, that, you know, survival intuition is very connected to your ego personality. It is. And you can influence this very strongly. If you elevate your self-esteem, then your ego is not fragile anymore. It becomes something that you can embrace with a humble nature. If you are not, you know, triggered every time someone calls you out on a particular thing, how much more powerful are you? Right? Even if someone just corrects you on something and it used to just trigger you and send you, you know, into shame after shame after shame, but you're like, oh yeah, I made a mistake with that. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Seriously, like that is very powerful. And, you know, sometimes it's very hard for us, especially when we're talking about family. I have a good example here before we go that I want to point out to you, that it's in The Crown. All right. It's in The Crown. I don't know if some of you like The Crown. Some of you have never seen The Crown, but it is about the royal family. And Prince Charles, as a young man, is talking to the Duchess, the one who was married to the king that abdicated. And that king that abdicated, they moved to France. They were stripped of their HRH titles, all this kind of stuff. I know it's royal stuff, all that stuff. But the point is, when he died, Wallace Simpson was at the funeral and was talking to Charles, and Charles was falling in love with Camilla at the time. And he said to her, she said, be careful of your family. And he said, they mean well, because he wanted to think that they mean well. Oh dear. And she said, no, they don't. No, they don't. And it's kind of like you're needing to really get away from the mindset of what you want to be true, right? What you want to be true. Charlie knows they don't mean well. What you want to be true and what is actually true. That's what you're really looking to do. I know. Seriously? Who in the world is knocking at my door? I can't. Sorry. All right. It's time to go anyway. Sorry, you guys. Someone is demanding I come to the front door. Okay. So that's awesome. Anyway, isn't that a sign of something? Someone's demanding I come to the front door. I don't want to. I know. All right. So thanks, Colleen. Thank you for everything today. All right. I hope that was helpful to you. Maybe we'll go over some of that stuff at the end so that we can really cement it in. I'll talk about creative and I'll talk about visionary next. All right, next week. Okay. Thanks,
And
guys. Thanks, Colleen.
check your texts right off.
I will. Okay. Bye. All right. If you like this lesson or these kinds of videos, please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the like button, and so other people can see the videos. They'll be shared more widely, and we would really appreciate that. So thanks for watching. Any other suggestions you have for different kinds of content you'd like to see me create? I am going to be creating a lot of content around 2025 and the astrology that we are going to be experiencing. So watch for those coming up in the next couple of weeks. I am going to do a full round of zodiac readings like I normally do, but I'm going to be integrating a lot of 2025 astrology into those. So it's going to take me longer. So thank you for your patience, and have a great day.